Hello and welcome back to Bookish Brits. My name is Michelle, and as you can see from the title of this video, this is my March wrap-up. I'm filming this in May with the hopes that I will be caught up soon enough for 2020, and so I'm filming this now. I have 10 books to talk to you about that I read in March. March was a funny old month, wasn't it? It was the start of lockdown. I was having some real anxiety wobbles, and books kind of pulled me through that, I would say. So at the beginning of the month, I was reading, well, let's just get into it and you can kind of see how my reading progressed throughout the month. So the first book that I read in March was The Boxer by Shukla. I think this was on the long list of the Carnegie. I was really intrigued to read it, especially as I'd read The Good Immigrant that Shukla had edited a while back. I knew he'd written books for young adults, but I hadn't read anything by him before. This book was really interesting. It was about a boy who is attacked in this racially motivated attack at the train station, and because of that he ends up training in a boxing gym. He becomes friends with this boy, and then the entire book is told within the structure of the 10 rounds of a boxing match. So it's got two different threads to it. The first is the present, in which he is in a boxing match with his friend, and you can kind of tell that something's gone wrong in that friendship. And the other one is all of the events that kind of lead up to that. So talking about the attack, his training, his friendship with this boy, and how he gets to the point to being in this boxing match with some really awkward, intense sort of like aggression. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I really like reading about sports in books. I just really like that element of it. I really like the main character's voice as well. And yeah, I think I'll definitely be reading more books by the same author. Next up, I read The Black Flamingo by Atta. What a beautiful book this book is. I really respond very well to books told in verse, but especially books like The Black Flamingo, which is just such a beautifully written journey of our main character towards like accepting himself and finding himself, finding a place where he belongs. The illustrations were gorgeous. The story itself was so gorgeous and accepting. And once you get towards that end, and my heart was just very, very full. I really, really enjoyed it. I hope it wins all of the awards. Next up, I think that lockdown had started to occur, and I wasn't really in the right frame of mind for reading. So what I usually do when I don't know what to read is I usually turn towards like adult romances. So I picked up In at the Deep End by Davies. I think I'd heard some interesting things about it, and it was like 99p on Kindle. So I bought it, never got around to reading it, and then decided, hey, I like the cover of this one, let's see what this one is about. Started reading it, and it's very different than what I thought it would be. It's about this woman who, as an adult, discovers that she's actually more into women, and she like really throws herself into this relationship with this woman who turns out to be quite controlling, and it's just not a very healthy relationship at all. I was expecting it to be a lot more fun and playful and sexy, I think, whereas it just didn't turn out to be that way. Like any kind of sex scenes between this main character and her girlfriend were just sort of tinged with this unhealthiness. for me anyway. So I think I only gave this one 3 stars. I didn't enjoy it very much. I liked the fact that it was LGBT. I think that I knew that going into it, but I didn't realize that it was more about this this relationship that isn't the healthiest. Next up, I read It Had to Be You by Keris Stainton. Keris Stainton is definitely one of my favorite authors, and I remember for this book in particular, I was feeling really anxious. I think I was having anxiety, dreams, not doing so great in terms of mental health, and then I started reading this book, and I remember there was one particular scene in it that had me crying with laughter. And I mean, it was a funny line, but I think that I ended up becoming a little bit hysterical with it, just because I needed that like release of emotions. So it's amazing how much books can pull you through some challenging times. Anyway, that one was a really funny, wonderful story by Keris Stainton. Next up, I read Who's That Girl by Mhairi McFarlane. I'd only read one book by Mhairi McFarlane prior to this. This one is about a woman who moves to London as soon as she can, and kind of is a little bit ashamed maybe of where she came from and her family, as she tries to be like a little bit more than what she is, and things go really wrong at a wedding of a colleague, and she kind of gets ostracized for it, and she's sent back to her hometown on this assignment to help write or co-write a celebrity autobiography. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I think on the basis of this I've downloaded another book by Mhairi McFarlane, because I like how she writes. It was really engaging. Next up, I read Grief Angels by David Owen. This was a book about grief, obviously, but aside from that, I didn't really know a great deal about it before I started reading it. It was really interesting. I liked the depiction of grief in this book, about friendships and growing out of friendships, and kind of the toxic masculinity of some of the characters in it as well. There was this like thread of magic realism that is like interwoven into the story. One of the characters is going through some grief, and yeah, I just think everything worked really well together. It was an interesting story. Next up, I read Clean by Juno Dawson. This was a book about a girl who ends up in rehab for her heroin addiction, and yeah, it got kind of like it got pretty serious within it about drug addiction. She goes to this like fancy rehab center someplace, and it was really gritty and hard to read in certain places. There wasn't a lot that I could feel I could relate to with that main character. She's very privileged. The life that she leads is nothing like my own, but I kind of got it as well. Her relationships with the other members of this rehab place were really cool, and just like the exploration of that addiction and enablement and recovery, I guess, was really good. So I definitely enjoyed that one a lot. Next up, I read Over You by Amy Reed. Amy Reed's one of those authors that I think I heard about a lot when I first started book blogging. Can't say I've read much about by her. I'm not entirely sure how I ended up with a copy of Over You, but this book was about a girl who goes with her best friend to stay at her best friend's mother's commune, and they decide to stay there for the summer, and it's about this really intense relationship between these two friends, and how our main character kind of like breaks away from it a bit as she falls, has feelings anyway for this other guy at the commune. It was really about the friendship between the two girls, and kind of realizing that some friendship, yeah, I don't know, I don't have concise, fully formed thoughts about Over You, so I think I'm gonna think about that one a little bit more, and then when it comes to writing a review for my blog, then maybe I might have some better thoughts about it. I did enjoy it, I just I'm having a hard time sort of pinpointing what it is that I took from it. Next I read Sadie by Courtney Summers. I'd had this on my Kindle to read since 2017 maybe, and I thought it was really, really good. It was very dark, about a girl whose sister is murdered, and our main character goes on this epic journey to avenge her sister's death, and it really gets darker than I imagined. It's told in like the format of podcasts, like Serial, I want to say. I've never heard of it, I've never really gotten into it, but it was definitely a really, really good book. Highly, like, it's hard for me to say I enjoyed a book with as dark of themes as this book had, but I did. I really, really enjoyed it. And the final book I wanted to talk to you about that I read in March was She Speaks by Yvette Cooper. This was a book that I downloaded using my local library's digital library, lost all my words, and this was a book of a collection of women's speeches. A lot of them are quite political, but they're speeches that affected change, and it was really interesting. I couldn't say that I knew all of them, but there was like a mixture of famous women that you're all familiar with, and then also other women's speeches who did great things as well. So I kind of liked that there was a combination of women I was familiar with and women who I hadn't heard about, but that did good things and did as much as they could to change things anyway. So yes, a very varied bunch with these books. I would say my favorites from these books was definitely The Black Flamingo by Atta and Sadie by Courtney Summers. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again next time.